Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Success Series. I'm your host, David Berg. I'm here with our co-host, Michael Konowski. Our special guest of today is Leila Centner. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is episode 23. Leila has a very cool and exciting story. She's the founder and chief executive officer of Centner Academy, as well as Centner Wellness. Prior to that, she was the chief financial officer of the Highway Toll Administration. Leila, we're excited to hear a little bit more about your story. If you could just start us off with how you got to where you are today, where you're from, and kick it off from there.
So I grew up in California, lived there pretty much until I was 34, undergraduate, USC, accounting major. I had a massive love for numbers, so that's why I was accounting major. And then I went off later on. I got my MBA, started my own accounting business. In between that time, I was also a CFO for a couple of other companies. Then started my own business, then met my husband. I was probably about 33, 34. And he lived in New York, so I moved to New York. It was definitely my soulmate. I mean, it was instant, you know. Wow. From the moment I heard his voice, I felt it in my body. So I was like, there's definitely a past life connection with me and my husband, maybe many. And we lived in New York for 5 years, sold our company in 2018. We had already at that point moved to Miami, Florida, to start a new school. But during that time, we also started our spiritual journey. And I will say at that point, everything changed. You know, we really went from being completely unconscious, being unaware of our energy that we were putting out, just, you know, our constant triggers. Because my husband and I both grew up in a very troubled households. You know, my brother had a mom who was very violent and aggressive with him. So was his dad, and his dad died when he was young, maybe 15, 16. But his dad was pretty much disabled his whole life. He had an issue with his lungs. So, you know, he was always just not able to run around and play ball and just do the things that a dad could do for him. So, you know, I grew up on welfare. He grew up pretty much the same. Not on welfare, but really just a hard life. And before we had sold our company, it was just like, all right, we're going to go. We both were very passionate about having financial success because we didn't want to repeat anything that we, you know, grew up with. And we were like, okay, money is the answer, right? That's what we thought. Right. But it wasn't until we sold our company that we realized money's not the answer. You know, we like hit this goal and there was just this like emptiness, right? Like, okay, now I all of a sudden have to like think about my heart and my feelings and who I am. And wait a minute, something's missing here. Like, why is it that when the money hit the bank account, all of a sudden happiness didn't just like explode, right? It's like, oh, okay, because this something's wrong right here that we need to dive into and explore and figure out. We had no idea what that was or what that meant, you know, until, you know, we were in India and we were doing a Tony Robbins event, a spiritual event, and some friends of ours, they were taking a detour after the event to go to this like academy in India, like deep in the mountains. And so I'm like, where are you going? What are you doing? Right. And when she started describing it to me, I just like started crying because I was like, I felt completely called that it was time to stop walking around this, you know, earth being unconscious and unaware, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what that looked like. So when she started describing the program to me, I was like, okay, I'm all in. So we extended our trip in India for an extra 3 weeks. And my husband at that point was like, I'm going home. I'm not
enough of this.
I'm out. Yeah. Like, you tell me how it goes, I'm out.
Right.
It was I think an 18, 19-day program. And it was just completely changed my life. Like, I mean, I remember sitting in the class and really especially level 1, the concepts were not complicated, you know, and then you start doing these meditations and then this breath work, and then you've got all this trauma in your body that is being released, and you're like, what's happening to me?
Right.
That was my experience. And I had a massive shift, like in my vibration, like I could feel it, you know.
What was the name of the center?
It was called O&O Academy.
Okay.
So I asked the teachers, because they're monks, and I'm like, okay, my husband has to come here. What should I do? They're like, don't do anything. You need to just be yourself. You literally level up your soul. And I came home, and I was just, I felt lighter. I felt more free. I was now like pausing and breathing and meditating more, and just like pausing and going inward.
Right.
Okay, let me just observe what just triggered me right now. And it's just like a muscle. You just like keep working it out. You keep working it out until you come to a point where you're like, oh, okay, so this thing is triggering me a lot. You know, maybe it's time to do a little bit of breath work around that, or some sort of trauma release. And so when my husband saw that there was like a real shift, and it was like maybe 30 days.
That's what they say, it takes a form of habit, right? So,
yeah, it was about 30 days in.
Right.
He was like, okay, this is real. I want some of that. And so he comes up to me one day and he goes, I think I want to go to India.
Wow.
And I was like, I was so happy that he wanted to go, because, I didn't want to tell him. I didn't want to
coerce him into coming with you.
I wanted to grow. I wanted to evolve with him.
Right.
And so I almost started crying. I was just like, I'm so excited for you.
Right.
So he went, and he went for 21 days for level 1 and 2. And he cried 19 out of the 21 days.
Wow.
He even popped a blood vessel in his eye.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
incredible.
So to backtrack a bit, so how did you, first of all, fund school, given that you said you grew up in a challenging household, and then what was your journey to graduating from college? A lot of people in those type of, households don't go to college or graduate.
Well, I was very resourceful. So in high school, I didn't like it at all. So I was like just skating by and doing the minimum, whatever I could to just get out of there. I could not stand high school whatsoever. So I said, okay, I know I'm probably going to have to go to a junior college, because I really didn't feel like I learned much in high school at all. So when I started junior college, I knew, all right, it's time to kick it up. Like, I know I'm smart, and I know I've not applied myself because I felt like it was a waste of time.
Right.
And I'm probably going to need to apply for scholarships and grants and stuff like that. So I need to have great grades. And that's what I did. I went to a junior college, and I was like straight A's.
It was one day just a light bulb went off, and you're like, I have to.
It wasn't a light bulb. I knew it was time.
Oh, so you were just pushing the envelope as much as you could until you had to jump in. Okay, and then from there, so you graduated school in California. What was your immediate next step from that point?
Yeah, so at the junior college, that's when I applied to USC. It was the only place I wanted to go because they had an incredible accounting department. So I was like, I'm the ball. That's the only place I want to go. I had straight A's, and they accepted me. They gave me scholarships. I got a few loans, not many. Most of it was scholarship based, and had a great time at USC. I learned a lot. I was very much a nerd, and then I was selected to be as an intern to go to one of the top accounting firms, and that kind of started my career in public accounting as an auditor. And I worked for Arthur Andersen and then Deloitte and Touche, and it just gave me a great foundation and a great base of knowledge. And then like maybe 6 years later, I went off to get my MBA. And that was very helpful at UCI. And it's really kind of shaped everything that I've been doing with the accounting background, the business background,
Right.
and the hands-on experience every 4 to 6 weeks going into another very large company and being part of the audit team. And I love what I do now, just owning a school. I have Centner Academy, which started as just, I want to put our daughters somewhere safe. And then it became into, oh my gosh, there is a huge problem in the world,
Right.
and education is it. So this is not just about our beautiful girls, but it's about mankind. And as you may or may not know, especially since you came from New York, there is a massively woke, demonic agenda out there. And I call it demonic because the idea of telling a child you can choose your gender is beyond my imagination. Like, I can't comprehend it. It creates such confusion. It creates such insecurity. It creates a lack of confidence in that you were born to be who you are. I mean, if you're an adult and you want to start making those choices, do it, go for it. But as a child, I was 13 still playing with Barbie dolls.
Right.
I can't imagine somebody telling me, what's your gender? I would be like, what?
What are you even talking about?
What do you mean, what's my gender? I'm a girl? Like, it's so confusing, but there's spiritual war going on. And what a great way to destroy our youth by confusing their sexuality.
Right.
And that's what's happening. And so at our school, we are very anti any of that insanity. We want our kids to be playing with toys. We don't want anybody, we don't want any of these third graders thinking about sex. Like, This is crazy.
Completely.
Or these drag queens reading to 5-year-olds. Hey, mommy, what's a drag queen? Like, I don't want to have that conversation with my 5-year-old.
Right.
I want my 5-year-old to be thinking about mathematics, learning how to read, learning how to add. Like, why would this even come up?
Right. So tell us a little bit. Okay, so that's the why, and then what are you guys doing on a practical, educational, fundamental level to counter that and kind of create your own curriculum that maybe most schools today don't have?
Well, one, I was inspired by meditation and consciousness and going inward, and it really helped transform my life and my husband's life. I said, this has to be the foundation of our school. Consciousness has to be a very key element, because the more conscious you are, you're not only helping yourself and others around you, but that energy, that impact impacts people that you don't even know. And it's such a simple concept to just pause and breathe. And when I see some of these kids that are like 4 or 5 years old, that I get these stories from their parents that they go home and tell me, Mom, maybe you just breathe with me. It's so basic, but it's so powerful. And so, I study Kabbalah, and Etan is my weekly teacher, which is amazing. It's so helpful to really also understand that everything that's happening to us, there's a deeper meaning, there's a deeper reason behind it. So you don't go into this place of woe is me or victim, or you're blaming, but you're going, okay, this is not fun what's happening to me right now.
Right.
I'm not enjoying this. But so that I don't repeat this mistake in my life again, let me peel back all the layers of the onion, understand exactly what happened to me and why, so I can learn from it, evolve my soul, and not repeat it again. Otherwise, the universe is going to keep giving me until I go, okay, got it. And so it's very fascinating to see, and I'm super grateful and blessed that that I have the opportunity to have someone like Etan as my weekly coach, because sometimes I'm in the midst of something that's happening that is challenging or feels chaotic, and I can really just like, okay, can we talk about this?
Right. What's actually happening here on a deeper level?
What's the deeper meaning? There's something I need to learn from this.
Right.
And it's fun to correlate it to the teachings sometimes. It's like, okay, wait, we just talked about Moses and the golden calf, and and idling the golden calf, and how all the consequences from that. And sometimes if you can equate that to, if you're focused on material things, it could also bring you problems when you're not really focused on the spiritual part of it, the inner part of it.
Right.
So there's just there's just like in Kabbalah, there's so many different tie-ins, just your everyday way of life. And that's what, for me, I feel like, because I converted to Judaism 12 years ago. And I went through, you know, the hard, like, studying
Right.
and
It's very rigorous thing.
memorizing
Right.
everything. But then I start studying Kabbalah. I'm like, oh, that's why we have Purim, you know? Oh, okay, that's what Passover really means.
Right. Not just tradition. It became more of a deeper understanding as to why you're doing the things you're doing. And,
Yeah, right? Otherwise, you're just kind of going through the motions, and it's all very mechanical.
right.
And you're not really understanding, what does this mean?
Completely. So you mentioned prior that when you and your husband sold the company, there was this expectation there would be tremendous happiness, and there was, maybe I'm sure there was a little, right, maybe sense of relief or some joy that you experienced, but it wasn't what you ultimately thought it would be. A big part of a demographic or young aspiring entrepreneurs, younger people, that they say if they have money, all their problems go away.
No.
What would be your answer? What would you tell them?
You will actually have more problems if you do not focus on your inner spiritual self. You will have way more problems, and you could potentially lose all that money, because then you're going to be making decisions not from a good place, from a survival mode. And you know, why do you, there was a study that I saw once a few years ago where people who would win the lottery, within a certain number of years, they'd be completely back to where they were before.
Right. Or worse, right?
Or worse. And so if you don't work on your childhood trauma, if you don't work on being conscious, if you don't work on evolving your soul, there isn't any amount of money in the world that's going to make you happy. You will feel a moment of, yes, I hit my goal, but then what? And so if I were able to do things over again, and I did some stuff, like as an 18-year-old, you know, I would listen to the Tony Robbins cassette tapes. I did hypnosis. But if I were to really do it over again, I would start with spirituality. That would have saved a lot of unnecessary, just going through, you know, like instead of smooth and flowing,
Right.
it would have just saved so much angst.
What would you say for someone who's not spiritual, has a tremendous amount of money or has earned a tremendous amount of money? Is there a way for them to experience parts of joy from it, or do you think it's kind of black or white? It's either you're this or that.
I think it's black or white. I think the self-awareness part of spirituality, the part to really go within, and the part to just not be a victim and not blame, is so powerful. And it puts that power back in your hands, where you feel you're in more control.
Right.
Life is not controlling you. You're driving this boat.
Right. Completely. And then what's your take on technology, social media? I'm sure you, right, in your school, you probably implement some practices as well surrounding that. So
In terms of social media incorporated in businesses?
more in adolescents, children. Yeah.
This is a very, very large topic in my school right now. Social media, iPads, devices, they're destroying the minds of our youth. And we have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they have like complete lockdown on the devices.
Wow.
You know, there's a cartoon called Torah Kids that I'll let them watch like 10 minutes on a Saturday.
Yep.
But there is really some crazy technology in these devices that are rewiring our kids' brain in a very harmful way. And our kids need to be playing. They need to be outside. They need to be using their creativity. These devices are instant gratification. And it's causing so much emotional and mental harm. And even teachers can point out the kids that are iPad kids.
Really? Wow.
They can point them out. It's causing ADHD. These kids are impatient. They're constantly frustrated. They're almost like looking for something to swipe and something to touch on a device. Their handwriting skills have gone down the drain. So I'm doing my own research, and I'm trying to share it with parents. There's actually a really cool video I'll send to you so you can share.
Sure.
It's 11 minutes, but it's just it's so much easier for a parent to quiet their child with a device. Or I don't know if you've seen this when kids are in a restaurant.
Right, with the headset and the iPad.
I mean, when I see that, my heart just sinks, you know? It might be easier now, but in the long run, it's going to be way harder because you're going to have a child that when they're adult, they're going to be so much less productive in society.
Right.
Because they absolutely cannot cope with certain emotions. They're impatient. They're always frustrated. They can't focus at school because all they can think or want is instant gratification, which is what these devices give you. And then forget about social media for kids. I mean, that's even worse. I mean, you have these kids swiping and they get these body image issues
Right.
because they see these, you know, models that are like perfect 10,
Right.
you know, and they don't understand that that's touched up and that's this and that. And so they start looking at themselves in the mirror like, oh, my thighs are a little too thick. And it's heartbreaking, really. Kids should not be comparing themselves to these supermodels.
Right.
Not to mention, like you said, they don't even know if their thighs really look like that. They could be photoshopping each one
Completely
before they
unrealistic.
post.
Right.
So I really encourage parents to just keep them away. I know everybody has them, but that doesn't mean you should be part of that.
Right.
And in the long run, you're just helping your child become a more emotionally stable, grounded, and a child that's not going to lose their imagination. Like
Right.
these days, sometimes I hear kids saying, "I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored." You know, we have a property we go to in New York that's like 32 acres, and we had a
Yeah.
bunch of kids over, and they all wanted to play devices, and I'm like, nope, no devices.
Only outside.
Go outside.
Yeah.
And I had bikes out there, everything, you know, and a couple of the kids were not happy with me.
Right.
I'm bored, and they're screaming to their parents. I'm like, sorry, my house, my rules.
Right.
But really, like, you're bored, like, you've got so much beautiful grass and trees. Go climb a tree, right? Go ride a bike. But if they're sitting there with these devices all day long, they don't want to go outside anymore. You need the sun. You need the power from the sunlight.
Right.
You need that.
Completely. How do you overcome the need for children to feel like they're fitting in with their peers if every other kid in the class has an iPad and an iPhone and then one kid doesn't?
Sure, I've heard that. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm responsible for you and not your friends.
Right. How does you think kids will just naturally overcome that and become stronger?
Mine did.
Yeah.
Mine did. Yeah, of course. It took the first week of me going, all right, this is over.
Yeah.
Like, we're not doing this anymore, was like a week of insanity.
Sure.
But when she realized I was serious, and then I also showed her some educational videos on what the devices are doing to her brain, I think it also clicked for her, like, oh, you're right.
Right. I think people underestimate how much kids grasp and can understand at a young age.
Yeah, they're smart.
Right.
But then after that, she doesn't bother me anymore. She's like,
It is what it is.
it is what it
And I'm
is. They
happy.
play with their Legos. You know, they know
Right.
color, play their games,
Completely.
Uno, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I talk with my friends. We always think back to our childhood. That was before the iPhone. We had flip phones at the most. We were always outside, cops and robbers, basketball, right? Like there was no such thing as coming inside and all of us being on a it's crazy.
Hide and seek.
Right?
We played some amazing
and they were
games
so
of
much
hide
fun,
and
right? I missed that today.
seek.
you know?
Yeah, tag.
Yeah.
It's just so many fun things to
Yeah.
play. Jump rope.
Right.
We would play the Chinese. I think it's called Chinese jump rope.
Okay.
You know, where you're like,
A couple people jumping in the same rope, or it's
yeah, it's like a little thing wrapped around your legs.
Yes.
And it's,
Yes.
you know, different. I mean, we had such a great time.
Right. Right. Completely. And so what would you tell yourself, given where you are today, when you were 15, 17 years old, if you can think back and you would give yourself one message, what would it be?
That message would be start working within now. I will tell you, there was an event in Fort Lauderdale from the place from India. They hosted a 4-day breathwork meditation event. And I had taken probably 10 adults and one 15-year-old. She didn't want to go. Her mom kind of was like, okay, listen, you go and you can just sleep the whole time.
just have to be there.
But you're going to be next to me. Like, I'm not going to force you to pay attention. I just want you next to me. And if after 2 days, this isn't doing it for you, I will be like, okay. So she goes kicking and screaming, but within the first day, she's howling, crying, releasing trauma. I mean, she had something happen in her life that was very traumatic. She lost a loved one. And it's not easy as a young girl. And so she was releasing and she was screaming and she was howling through the breath work and she was processing. And she just was like, wow. I mean, she felt like a different person. Wow. And so day 2 comes, and again, she's just having it, like, I would say having an amazing time because it's hard work.
Sure. Healing
your wounds is hard work. But she felt lighter, and she could feel the immediate release. So her mom was like, I'm assuming you're coming back, and she's like, I not only want to come back, I want to continue this journey. Wow. Like, this is the beginning for me. And I look at her, 15, and I'm like, wow, she has no idea how powerful her life is going to be now. She is so far ahead of, I didn't start until I was 40.
Right.
She's so far ahead of me. She's so far ahead of so many people I know. And now she's craving that spiritual knowledge. She's craving that consciousness and the awareness. And both her and her mom are just different people. I ran into them yesterday, and they're just like, thank you. That was such a gift.
That's beautiful. How do you have to go to India to experience this, or is there a way to replicate this in the States?
No, they come here.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they were in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, wow. So that was a replica of the event.
It was a mini version of it, yeah. And September, they're going to be, I'll give you the links. You can share it in September. They're going to be in LA.
Okay.
But it's a 4-day focused on you looking within, focusing on your own emotions, focused on deep meditations, focused on transformational breath work, compact in a very short period of time. And people come out of there just a new person.
Completely changed.
Yeah.
There's so many different modalities of spirituality. Yeah. If you go through social media, there's just endless content.
Sure.
For someone who's completely misguided today and is suffering from anxiety and depression like most of the world, where would you suggest they start? Just a first step.
I suggest they start with your Kabbalah program. Your online program.
Right.
It's fantastic. And then just download some breathwork apps.
Any you recommend?
There's so many these days on the App Store. People got to find what feels good for them. There's also Brain Tap. I don't know if you've ever used that. Okay. It's these headphones you can buy. I think they're like $500, and it's connected to so many different meditations. And when you close your eyes, there's different lights that flicker, so it's doing things to your brain. While there's just so many ways to go about it. But I think it's important to understand the teachings, which is why I think Kabbalah online is great for people. Because again, that's empowering you to have that self-awareness.
Right.
And breath work, meditation. They have some great meditations. Kabbalah, different type of Kabbalah meditations and prayers, and you just start with that. Keep it basic.
Yeah, you don't need to do 100 things at once.
You don't need to, no. And then once you get into that and you start learning the teachings and understanding what you're doing, then maybe go do a 4-day event.
Right.
So look up your local Kabbalah center and see if they're doing breath work and meditation.
Absolutely. And another question we get from our listeners a lot is, as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, having your own profession, how do you balance all those things? And then how do you not get caught up with what society thinks you should be doing at 20 years old, at 30 years old, 40 years old?
Well, I'm a very stubborn person.
Okay.
So I really don't care what society thinks about me.
You do the complete opposite of it.
Yeah, that's something that's never really guided me. But with our girls, and I try and teach them the same thing, like, do what's right within. Like, ask yourself when you're making a decision, like, how does that feel? Does it feel good in your stomach? Or do you feel like the butterflies or uneasiness? And you might want to listen to that voice. Don't make a decision because your friends are watching you.
Right.
Make a decision because you're feeling the signs that are telling you that's a good decision to make or it's not. And that's how I live my life. I get the butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Time out on that. I need to go inward a little bit before we finalize what to do here, because I'm not ready yet.
Right. And so thankfully to your girls, they have you as a guide. A lot of younger women don't have support. They don't have maybe the best family or the best parents.
Yeah.
Where can they seek guidance and understanding that they are their own empowerment?
Well, I didn't have the guidance, right? I didn't have any guidance. I would go, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I would go and sit at the beach and stare at the water. I didn't know I was like meditating. I didn't know what I was doing. And I would talk to God.
Wow. It just intuition?
It just came very natural to me. And I would just be like, okay, God, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?
Wow.
How am I supposed to do it? I'm listening to you. Please help me. And just really the calmer you can calm yourself. And again, I had no idea what I was doing. The more you can hear, is God's talking to all of us. He's right here in our hearts and souls all the time. But we just choose not to listen. Right. And I will tell you that the few times that I had decided to not listen, it's like, why didn't I listen? I heard you. You told it to me. You showed it to me. And I didn't listen. Okay, I got to deal with the consequences.
Right.
I have a good example I share with especially young women. Before my husband, I was dating this guy for 2 years. And he was one of those relationships. It's like, you shouldn't be in it.
Right.
God's showing you every day. You're ignoring it, and you continue to ignore it.
Yep.
And the way I like to visualize it is his warnings escalate, right? And so the last warning was we were on a boat. He's a man-child, and he's driving recklessly. Okay. And he hits a wave, and I fly up in the air, hit the side of my rib, cracked the rib.
Wow.
And literally I felt for a moment, did I die? It was like, it knocked me out. Finally, when I opened my eyes, I'm looking and I'm laying down, and this guy is, just totally worthless, staring at me. And I'm like, okay, I don't need any more signs.
This is it.
I got it. I'm like,
in that moment, it was clear as day.
I'm literally on the floor. My friends are like, are you okay? And I'm having a conversation with God, staring at that. I hear you now. It's over. I get it. And I'm crying as I'm talking to God. And I'm like, okay, well, I left that day, never saw him again, and never looked back. I had to go I went to the hospital because, I was,
right.
But that was it.
Wow.
I never looked back. And then I met my husband 30 days later.
30 days later.
30 days later.
Leila, thank you so much for coming on. There's so much more I'd love to ask you, but hopefully we'll do a part 2 later on.
Sure. Thank you.
I'm sure our listeners gained a ton, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.